Hello there. I do start the video with my nose because it's so cold. I have had to put gloves on. Freezing out here. You know the score. Me and Simboyd on a bench. So episode 8, Ramble 8. Let's go. What are we talking about? No idea. I do have a small plan, however. We're going to look at worldly wisdom from Mr. William Shakespeare. One quote from Cymbeline, 2 quotes from Hamlet. So let's go. Quote number 1, incoming, Cymbeline. Act 3. Weariness. Oh, Simba's doing a noise. Oh, Simba, I'm sorry. I've tied you up. I've tied you up because you're such a naughty dog. We had fun. Okay, right. Cymbeline. Coming over here to beg. Probably want some food. Sorry, Simba. I'll give you some food in a bit, okay? So, Cymbeline, incoming. Nope, don't jump. Nope, Simba. So, Cymbeline, Act 3, incoming. Weariness can snore upon a flint, aka a hard stone. Weariness can snore upon a flint, but restive sloth finds the down pillow hard. Down pillow being the cushy, goose feather, down, nice pillow. So restive sloth. Sloth being one of the greatest words in the English language, meaning inaction, laziness. I am one of the guiltiest members of the human race with regards to the vice of sloth. So, restive sloth, restive kind of being a superfluous adjective there, just driving the point home again. Restive sloth finds the down pillow hard. So weariness can snore upon a flint, but restive sloth. So what's the point there? I mean, the moral of the story is work hard, surely. Of that little quote, the moral of the story is, but there's a bit of echoing the sentiment of the Proverbs. The Proverbs of King Solomon. He says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard." Something. And there's a refrain in the Proverbs which is about the folding of hands being a sort of iniquitous thing, aka like when you just all these things have to be done in balance, in measure, but when you sort of give up and fold your hands and say that's enough work for me, I'm not going to be active. Folding of hands is something to be cautious of. So restive sloth finds the down pillow hard. So when you're not giving it your all in life, as I've done many times, even the greatest luxury, a beautiful down pillow, you can't even enjoy it. You find it hard. You find it like so restive sloth is the luxurious pillow is like a hard flint stone. That's the point. Is that when you're weary, when you've done good work in a day, then the smallest comfort is an absolute delight. And surely you've all experienced this. I experienced this when things are going in the right direction, and I am actually trying in life. The smallest comfort, say a beer, for example, yesterday, a beer, just drinking a beer on the corner of the street like an alcoholic. One of the finest pleasures. Absolutely, it was nothing, but it was so nice, you get the point. I think we'll move on. Weariness can snore upon a flint. but restive sloth finds the down pillow hard. Cymbeline. Okay, Hamlet. Quote number 2, incoming. We know what we are, yet we know not what we may be. Now, I got this one via Jay-Z, Mr. Jazzy Jay-Z, Mr. Sean Carter. So in the album 444, not 1, 4, not 2, but 3, back to back. 444, final album. 13th album, unlucky number. In the album 444, which song is it? He goes, better yet, here's a verse from Hamlet. Lord, we know what we are, but we know not what we may be. He says that. What song is that? It might be the song 444. Why do I find it so hard when I know in my heart I'm letting you down every day? What a great song. I don't think it is. It might be Smile. Also a great song. Or Bam. Some point in the album he says, here's a quote from Hamlet. Lord, we know not what we are, but we know not what we... Lord, we know what we are, but we know not what we may be. So, what's that about? Good question. It's... you know, I can't really unpack that idea in any short amount of time. It's such a simple line, but it would take at least 5 hours to unpack what that means. We know what we are, but we know not what we may be. It's an expression of potential. It's an expression that we can become other with great trial, tribulation, striving, effort. It is part of the nature of reality that we can become something else. So we know what we are, but we know not what we may be. There's a feeling there that there's another person you could become if you would only allow yourself. Simba has seen a cat and is going mental. Simba, come down. Simba, it's okay. It's the struggles of minor struggles of my life. Simba, good boy. All right, cat's gone. Cat has scarpered off into the bushes, so Simba's now sort of... He's still like bolt upright. Right, whatever. Okay, so we'll move on. Quote number 3, incoming. This one's a long one. Can I get it right? I was looking this up. This quote was on the wall in the classroom of one of my English teachers at school, and I remember looking at it and just thinking, well, it's a really long quote. I'm just going to give the first few sentences, but at the end of some point in the quote, the word promontory is used, and I just remember looking at the quote on the poster in the wall of the English classroom and thinking, promontory, great word, you know. Sometimes that's all it takes to pique your interest in an author, is just the use of a great word like promontory. Fantastic stuff. So here's the quote, also from Hamlet, William Shakespeare. What a piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, express and admirable, in action like an angel, in apprehension like a god. So there's so much there. Let's go again. Let's have it again. What a piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, express and admirable, in action like an angel, in apprehension like a god. Now, say you're 13 like I was, and you're just sitting in the classroom trying to avoid doing the work that was assigned by the teacher. And you're just looking at that quote on the wall. What does that do to you? What kind of effect does that have on a boy? It's like you're just looking at that quote and you're thinking, I don't know what it means. You know, to understand what something like that means requires an education. Even if you understand what each of the individual words mean, you don't know really what it means. I didn't know what it meant really, but it was just an inspiration. It was like, well, number one, that a human being with two eyes, with fingers, with toes, like you and I, could get to a point where they could write something like that. That's point number one, that there exist people, people that have mastered their own lives to the extent where they can write something so profound. That's cool. Number two, what a piece of work is a man. How infinite, how noble in reason, infinite in faculties, in form and moving, express and admirable, in action like an angel, in apprehension like a god. The last couplet of the angel and God with the action and the apprehension. It's an interesting. You couldn't say in action like a god. That would be too much. So he compares the action to the angel, and then he compares the apprehension. So apprehension, which is sort of perception, which is the glimpsing of golden ideas. To apprehend something. Perhaps we can be like a god. It's a kind of so what the whole quote is doing is it's truly it's bigging up mankind, okay? And so surely Shakespeare's talking about himself really in that, and in the English history, perhaps there are two people that could be rightly compared to gods: Isaac Newton, William Shakespeare. And they were by their fellow men. I've been reading this book called The Religion of Isaac Newton. Absolutely brilliant book. Written by a great scholar who did some visiting lectures at Balliol College in the 1970s. And but anyway, Isaac Newton was revered as a god by the French, no less. Bloody French, annoying. Annoying as they are, they just loved Newton. And so there were people in France, after he died, who set up a cult where he was essentially their god. Now, William Shakespeare is also on that sort of level, on the literary side, as opposed to the mathematical science outlook. And so Shakespeare is elevating mankind to a place perhaps too high. But the other thing with being a playwright or being an author of novels or some kind of literary thing is you can say things but put them in other people's mouths, So that I actually don't know the Hamlet very well, so I actually don't know who says that line. But whoever says it, it's a character. So Shakespeare's putting that, he's able to say something, but he puts it in someone else's mouth. So there is a sort of distance from. Whereas if you look at, a book, pick up a book which is the quotes of William Churchill, a bunch of those books out there. I've got a couple of great books, and but when you read those quotes, that is the man saying an opinion, a man saying an idea, and that is Churchill's sort of stake in the ground. Whereas if you put it in the character's mouth, you can sort of get away with saying things. So, what a piece of work is a man. How noble in reason. So what he's doing, yeah, he's just elevating. It's an elevation. It's a sort of veneration. And my brother is calling me. Now, if I take this call, I think the video will end. So I'll have to leave you ringing, Holly. Apologies. So I do get the impression that many humans don't like humans. You know, they don't really like them. In the final analysis, we're not all that great. Now, what do you do with someone who doesn't like humans? You love them and you try and persuade them otherwise. So human beings have messed up the planet in 50 different ways. And if we continue to do so, then we're in big trouble. So there's a temptation for saying, well, it would be better if humans never appeared really, and we just let the animals get on with their thing, and we just let the lions kill the antelopes and the snakes to slither around, and the ants make their little ant hills, and let the deers sort of roam around, and let the fish beetle around in the sea, and let the beetles beetle. You know, there's a temptation to just say let the elephants kind of drink from the watering hole, and let the rhinos have their horns, and not chop them off, and let the sort of birds nest in the trees, and leave them alone. Absolutely, we should do these things. The magnificence of creation is such that it calls out, it demands, it yells out for a fostering, it yells out for a stewardship, it yells out for a maintenance, taking care of, you know. And so this is absolutely necessary. Now, the problem arises when that kind of sentiment extends to the point where you say, well, the animals would look after themselves much better if we weren't here. It would have been better if we were never really here in the first place. And so why don't we just have less humans on the planet, and that would be great for the animals and the plants. See, these people are sort of very deeply concerned about the sort of the moisture of the seaweed, and the sort of the acorn, you know, the acorns, and they're very concerned that the plants are okay. Now that's great, you know. We should be looking after the plants, but the problem is the impulse that it's just, it's a good impulse, but it's an extremely dangerous one at the same time, because that impulse of less humans, please, like the general thing, if you summarize it in a sentence, it's kind of like fewer humans. Okay, fair enough. Now that is the same impulse that leads to genocide. I'm not accusing these people of genocide. Of course not. That's not the same thing. It's just, okay, if we're going to have less humans, which humans need to go? Which ones need to reproduce less? Now in China, they had the same impulse, perhaps not driven by environmentalism, but driven by national concern. They were worried that their population was expanding too fast, and that the economy would dwindle if they had to look after all these people. So the famous one-child policy was introduced. Now, okay, great, but the reality of that, what actually happened, is that loads and loads and loads of female girls were aborted and or killed, infanticide, because people thought if they're going to have one child, they want it to be a man. Now that's on the parents for being sexist, and that's not okay. But the fact that they had to abort anyone, even if they were aborting the males in equal measure to the females, that's not cool. That's not cool. That's not okay. So that's a problem. So if we can have less humans, which humans need to go? Be specific, you know? Okay, we need to kill some people, or we need to have some people reproduce less. Which ones? All of us? Okay, well, if it's everyone, if you're not going to be specific and you're just going to say, well, everyone in general needs to reproduce less, then that is a draconian impact on people's freedom. Because if it turned out to be the case that everyone wanted to reproduce less, then your theory's going great, fantastic. What happens if people want to have children and want the joy of that? Then what does your request become? Something else, something unnerving. So, back to the quote. What a piece of work is man. And now, the quote kind of doesn't shine a light on any of the bad things about human being. Human being. I like to use it without the S on the end because I don't know. I just like it. Human being. There's lots bad about it. About us. The quote doesn't touch on that. But sometimes you can't say you can't give the whole truth you just got to express a perspective. Sometimes you just got to and so if you try and express the totality of a thing from all different angles in one go, you end up doing nothing. So sometimes you just got to express a perspective, a vantage point. And so that's what I've done in this video. I think we've kind of got to wrap it up a little bit. So, ramble over. Thank you for listening. I'm going to turn this off with my nose. Good.